What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So I want to talk about this news story that came out a couple of days ago, and they had a judge ruling yesterday when it comes to stimulus checks for inmates. Now, this is interesting because we're going to listen to Karl Rove. He's going to be talking about this whole thing. He's also going to talk about a strategy for the Republicans if they win majorities in the House and the Senate. So this is something I've been interested in. What are the Republicans going to do if they win the House and the Senate? Are they going to have any legislation? Because as of now, we haven't heard much coming from Republicans when it comes to what they want to do for the American people. As a matter of fact, we haven't heard anything. They haven't talked about their plan for the American people. They've just talked about what President Biden shouldn't be doing, and we shouldn't be spending money and all this, but they haven't talked about their plan. And as we know, when it comes to proposals, any proposal that's out there, it's going to cost money. Okay. And if it doesn't cost money, that means you're taking money from somewhere else. So we're going to take a look and listen to this clip. But first off, on this channel, we talk about financial news and what's going on in Washington, D.C. If that sounds like something interesting to you, please subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell notification. That way you'll get notified anytime we put out a video. And like always, if you see my name and a picture of me in the comment section, make sure you see a check mark next to my name. That check mark signifies that it's me. If you do not see that check mark, it's not me. It's someone trying to impersonate me. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this clip. Here we go.
Convicted Boston Marathon bomber received a stimulus check of $1,400 back in March. Now, this shouldn't surprise anyone, though. Democrats cleared the path for this to happen after they brushed off an amendment to Biden's American Rescue Plan that would have blocked convicted inmates from getting stimulus checks in the first place. Here now, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff and Fox News contributor Karl Rove. So, Karl, I want you to weigh in on this because I know you study politics, you track these races, and it looks like 2022 is going to be a bloodbath. Looks like no matter who's going to be the president, whether it's Joe Biden or if Kamala has somehow become president, the Republicans are going to get some major gains. So what are they going to do with that power? Because there's a lot of folks in the audience, a lot of people within the Republican base that feel like the leaders are fighting for them.
Yeah. Well, I'd say two things. You got two issues here. First, let's take the issue of the Democrats and the stupidity of saying the Boston Marathon bomber ought to get a stimulus check. But this problem emerged last year.
Okay, now, and I agree. Inmates should not be getting stimulus checks, but you're going to have to listen to his explanation because there's a hole in his explanation. I'll explain.
In 2020, under President Trump, we passed relief to people, and come to find out, because of the way the bill was written, that we found out after the fact that people who were in prison got checks. Okay, so inmates got checks. So guess what? The Boston bomber probably got that first stimulus check as well. And this became a big kerfluffle. And so when they got ready to pass a similar round of stimulus checks.
Okay, now the only problem that I have with this is he skipped a stimulus check. We've received 3 stimulus checks. Okay, so we received the first one. That was $1,200. And then there was a second one. That was a $600 stimulus check. Where was the amendment there to make it so inmates weren't going to receive stimulus checks? It wasn't there. And so now they're saying, okay, in that third stimulus check, oh, okay, yeah, you know what? We had one that went out to inmates. Then we had 2 that went out to inmates. And you know what? The third one, we can't have that one go out to inmates. So that's when they put the amendment through. But that was during the President Biden's administration. And that was in a reconciliation bill. That was in a bill that was only Democrats were voting for it. You didn't have any Republicans voting for it because the reality is some Republicans voted for that first stimulus check and the second stimulus check that went out to inmates.
In 2021, we already knew that this had happened. And so the amendment was offered by the Republicans, and every single Democrat voted against it. And why? Because Dick Durbin stood up and said, well, we don't want to hurt the families of the people in prison. By denying them a check, we're going to deny their family a check, as if the people in prison were automatically going to give their money to their, whatever, their spouse, their kids, their whatever. So
now, first off, give the money. Unless they have bank accounts, and if you're in prison for a period of time, you probably don't have a bank account. You need to file taxes. So that was one thing, right? You had to file your taxes 2018, 2019. So they're probably not receiving these checks. I don't see those checks going to the prison system. Okay. So the only way that those checks would have arrived is they would have arrived into, let's say you were married and you had, a significant other, then the check would go to them. but that was the only way that the checks would be sent out. They weren't sending checks to the prison system. And like I said, I don't agree with inmates getting checks. And I think this amendment that they opposed at the very last minute, when it came to the $1.9 trillion bill, that was just to delay. They wanted to delay the bill. They weren't voting for it. These Republicans that wanted, they didn't want these checks to go out to inmates. They could have done it prior to this. They could have done it in the $600 stimulus check. They chose not to. They waited until the Biden administration was there, and they were trying to pass something through reconciliation, and they wanted to hold up that bill. And so that was one of the amendments that they put through. Now, putting a bill like that through, of course, that's going to delay stimulus checks. So that would mean that the IRS is going to have to figure out who's in custody, who's not in custody, who's been convicted and who's not been convicted, because you have some people in the jail system, in the county system, they haven't been convicted yet. And they're awaiting their to see if they're going to be convicted or not. So those people, are they still able to get stimulus checks? Because what they're saying here is convicted people in custody shouldn't get stimulus checks. Okay, now you have to figure out who's going to get stimulus checks, who's not going to get stimulus checks. The county system, county jail system, you have the state prison system, you have the federal prison system. So you have all these different entities. They all don't work together. So you can't just type in someone's name and find out if they're in custody or not. You have to go through the county, or you have to go through the state, or you have to go through the federal system. So this would have delayed stimulus checks for months, because they would not have been able to figure this out right away. Checks wouldn't have been going out as fast as they were. And I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not saying that inmates should receive checks. I'm just saying logistically it would be a nightmare. And to figure that all out, that's the reason why they wanted to get those stimulus checks out to the American people as fast as possible. And that's the reason why they just said, okay, look, we're going to send the stimulus checks out. They did it with the first one. They did it with the second one. And then on the third one, that's when Republicans wanted to say, oh, wait, hold up. We can't send out stimulus checks to inmates, when they had sent it twice already.
This was a stupid vote, and why the Democrats made their members vote for it. Now you're going to have Mark Kelly in Arizona and Warnock in Georgia having to go home and defend giving money to the Boston Marathon bomber as part of the COVID relief. They're in jail. What are they going to spend that money on? More commissary privileges? So anyway, why the Democrats do things like this is beyond me, but it is stupid. But
okay, now this is one of the things that I don't like when I don't see the full story. Okay, so this was posted on Friday. Now on that same day, and I'm going to show you this clip here. On that same day, now we're talking about, now they're using the Boston bomber because they know that will incite people. People will be upset because the Boston bomber received a stimulus check. But what they're not telling you, and this happened on the same day, what they're not telling you is that judge orders Boston Marathon bomber's stimulus check can be used to pay his victims. So that stimulus check is going to be going to pay victims. And that's the story that they're not sharing with you. They're sharing with you, yes, this is sensational. The Boston bomber received a stimulus check, but what they're not telling you is a judge ordered, and this is the U.S. Attorney's Office went to a judge. So President Biden's administration went to a judge and said, look, this stimulus check should go to victims. And I think other inmates who receive stimulus checks and have victims in their case, they should be sent to victims as well. And this would be something that you're going to have the local systems. They're going to have to figure out who received a stimulus check and do that. Now we have time to do that. The stimulus checks have gone out to everyone, right? So now they can look at some of the people who receive stimulus checks that should not have received stimulus checks, or people who are inmates that receive stimulus checks, and go ahead and go to court and try to figure out if they can get this money sent to victims. So that's a good thing that they can do now. But that's the end of that story that they're not telling you. They're just telling you the first part of the story. They're not telling you that, hey, you know what? This money is actually going to victims, which is a good thing. Okay, let's go ahead and continue.
Where we better make certain, those of us who are conservatives and Republicans better make certain that their party and its candidates get their act together. Virginia shows us the way. Glenn Youngkin won not by simply saying, look how bad Biden is doing it. He had an agenda that said, here's what I'm going to do to improve the economy, to crack down on crime, and to make it and to elevate the education of our kids. So whether it's the economy, whether it's inflation, whether it's government spending, whether it's foreign affairs, whether it's immigration, Republican candidates better have a concrete idea of what they want to do and share that with the voters in their states and their districts. Otherwise, we're not going to win as many. Republicans will not win as many victories as they would otherwise receive.
Carl, it seems like the ground game is going to be essential. You know, I was in Virginia 2 months before the election. Didn't look like it was going Youngkin's way. It really didn't. You were talking with people, they didn't know who he was, but he continued to go out there, talk with voters about the issues that matter to them. It wasn't just CRT. It was the fact that the parents wanted more control of the education. They were tired about their kids being in mass or being at home, and that mattered to them. But if you're not talking to the voters, you really can't make that case to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I happened to have a conversation with the candidate in, I believe it was early October. He'd been down on the Tidewater the night before for a big rally, and that morning he began at an historically black college in the Tidewater, and met with the president of the university, and then met with a bunch of students. What was the number one issue the students wanted to talk about? I'm getting an engineering degree. Why is it that I can't find a job here in Virginia? Why do I have to go interview for jobs outside of the state when I want to stay here? I want to start a small business, and I've looked into it. Why is it so difficult to start a small business in Virginia? And he had answers because he'd thought about three big issues and made his entire campaign about jobs, crime, and education.
Yeah, it could be so simple if Republicans just listen to their voters. Carl, thanks so much for your analysis.
Okay, so that was Karl Rove talking about the strategy when it comes to Republicans. And this could backfire. This could actually backfire on them because when you look at history, when it comes to let's say the president is a Democrat, and then you have the House run by Democrats and the Senate run by Democrats, usually there's a shift in the midterms. It always happens. Okay, so in this situation, we're most likely going to see a shift. So we're going to see Republicans take the House, and they might take the Senate as well. If we see a situation like that, what are Republicans going to do? And if they can't do anything for 2 years, then now you're looking at the 2024 election for president. So in that situation, does that mean President Biden's going to have more of an advantage because you'll have Republicans running Congress and not doing anything? So, I mean, this is one of those situations where Republicans, yes, they want to take back the House, they want to take back the Senate, but if you do that, what are you going to get done? Because you still have to go through the president. You're going to have to negotiate with the president in order to get things done. And if things don't work, if you can't get things through and you can't negotiate things down, then there's going to be a huge problem. And they're going to face that in 2024. So we're going to have to really watch this whole story. And when it comes down to it, this is a situation where Republicans might get what they're wishing for, but they might not be able to do much with what they get. And so we don't know. We don't know. Do they want anything similar to a stimulus check? Do they want anything similar to Medicare expansion or a raise for Social Security? Or are they in favor of any of that? We don't know because they're not talking about it. And traditionally, they've been against raises for Social Security. As a matter of fact, they want to change the whole Social Security system. They don't think that it should be the way it is. They think they should privatize it. There's a lot of different things that are going on. And if Republicans start coming out and saying, yeah, we want to do this, we want to do that, you might lose some support. So I think right now they want to be as quiet as possible, just let things play out, let the economy continue to be shaky, let inflation continue to rise and all that. And then after they win, then they're going to try to see, okay, how are we going to be able to fix all this stuff? And it's going to be a struggle. It's really going to be a struggle. So I want to know what you guys think about all this. What do you think about inmates getting stimulus checks? Let me know down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.